Hey everyone, welcome to Relatively Refined. My name is Paula. Well, from Gothic tales to candlelit coziness, I'm going to talk with you about all the books that you need this spooky season. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, grab yourself a cup of potion and let's get started. Well, now that we are in October, it is officially the spooky season, and it is the perfect time to curl up with some of my favorite spooky season reads. From Gothic tales to witchy enchantment, I've got a stack of books here that I think you will enjoy reading this spooky season. The first book that I want to share with you is the new Mary Engelbreit Little Book of Witches. Is it not absolutely adorable? I ordered this for myself as a birthday present, and it is filled with adorable drawings by Mary Engelbreit and quotes from some of the more famous witches. For example, on the first page, it says, "Are you a good witch or a bad witch?" And that is a quote from Glinda the Good Witch from The Wizard of Oz. Look at that. Isn't that darling? This one says, "I am a witch, a real house-haunting, broom-riding, cauldron-stirring witch, Samantha," from the show Bewitched. And the book is just filled with Mary Engelbreit's adorable little drawings. Looky, looky, ain't I spooky? It's just so cute. I had seen on her Instagram page where this was coming out, and I knew that I would love it. I'm not a big fan of the spooky, scary, gory Halloween. I really like the cutesy stuff, and this was right up my alley, so I treated myself to it for my birthday. There's Phoebe snoring in the background. The next book that I want to share with you is a really fun read. It's called The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. Now, I checked this out of my local library, and I read this in a weekend. It's really fun. It's very lighthearted. It's the story of a young witch who was raised to believe that witches under no circumstances should gather together or spend any length of time around other witches. Their powers would combine and something terrible was sure to happen. She's also, of course, had to keep her true identity a secret from everyone else in the world. And that has created a situation in which she is actually a very lonely young girl. One day she answers and, oh, girl, hold on one second. Let me get with the girls. Okay, I'm back. There were people walking by. Hazel sits right over here behind you in the window and barks at everybody that walks past, and then it gets Phoebe over here going. Anyway, one day she answers a plea from someone for a tutor for young witches. This person contacts her and asks her, would she be interested in tutoring these 3 young girls who are witches, and they need someone to teach them how to use their witchcraft. So very reluctantly, she answers the ad and she travels to Norfolk in England, where she meets these 3 young girls who are witches and their guardians. Well, for the first time in her life, she feels like she belongs to something. She really loves being at the house. It's this old rambling house out near the sea in Norfolk, and she's very charmed by the guardians, and she's particularly interested in the librarian for the home, who is kind of a curmudgeonly young man who is not very happy that Mika Moon, who is the young witch, is there to tutor the girls. Anyway, there's some light romance in this. It's just a fun, light read and has, a wonderful kind of romance ending. But it's a fun story and not scary at all. So if you're looking for something lighthearted to put on your spooky season reads, I highly recommend The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. Next up is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This book is the first in a trilogy by Miss Harkness. This book is the story of Diana, who is a reluctant witch and also a historian. And one day, while doing research in the library at Oxford University, she stumbles upon an ancient enchanted manuscript. Now, not only does that manuscript unlock her own supernatural powers, but it also attracts a whole host of powerful and supernatural and magical beings, such as vampires. What happens after that is part Gothic romance, part academic mystery, and Harkness weaves together alchemy and magic and old academia vibes, along with the very modern themes of forbidden love and the battle between tradition and choice. It's just a wonderful book. I mean, it's pretty fat. It's a pretty thick book. Let's see, how many pages does it have? It has almost 600 pages. So it's a chunker of a book, but it reads very quickly. It's very engaging. And I think you could probably read it alongside, watching the TV series if you can find it. I'll have to see if I can find it anywhere and link it. But it has a lot of Gothic academia vibes. I happen to love that kind of a theme, so I really, really enjoyed this book. It does take a while, as I said, to get through it, but you don't really feel it. Once you're in it, it's kind of a page turner. It really is just such a wonderful book. And the descriptions of the landscape and the university and give you all those kind of Gothic feels and that spooky sense of mystery and alchemy and ancient lore. I just really, really enjoyed this. It's not a scary or gory in that sense. It really is much more mystical, but it was a really fun read, and I highly recommend A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. The next book that I want to recommend is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This is a classic Gothic romance. If you have not read Jane Eyre, October and November are the perfect months to read this book. It's got lots of imagery of windswept moors and candlelit rooms and shadowy corners. It's the story of Jane, who is an orphan girl who's been very cruelly raised by relatives, and as a result of that, she kind of develops her own sense of fierceness. Eventually, she leaves and goes to become a governess at Thornfield Hall, where she falls in love with the gentleman of the manor, Mr. Rochester. As she discovers throughout the book, the grand house itself holds lots of secrets, but the descriptions within the novel are perfectly Gothic and eerie. As I said, the windswept moors, the secretiveness of the home and its kind of hidden secrets, candlelight imagery, by the firelight, gloomy, windswept. I mean, all of the kind of spooky season things that you expect in a good Gothic novel. So Jane Eyre is a book that I would add to my spooky season reading list if I were you. And if you haven't read this, by all means, pick it up, because I think, I read this first in high school, and it's hard, I think, to appreciate this when you're 16 years old and reading it. It's much better to read it later in life, and I think I enjoyed it so much more when I read it again later in life. It's one of my favorite Bronte sisters novels. So if you haven't read this, I highly encourage you to check it out of your library or purchase a copy and sit down on a cozy, rainy, windy October afternoon and find yourself kind of buried deep in the misty moors and the shadowy halls of Thornfield Hall. The next book that I recommend is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. This is considered one of the most influential Victorian sensational novels. It is truly a page turner. The book is the story of a young man, Mr. Hartright, who is a painting teacher, and he takes a job at the urging of a friend of his for a gentleman out in Cumberland who is hiring him to tutor his 2 daughters in painting. Well, en route from London to Cumberland, very, very late at night, Mr. Hartright has an encounter with a woman dressed all in white. It's a very, very strange encounter, and he later finds out that she has escaped from an insane asylum. Well, as it turns out, her story is very much woven into all of the kind of secretive, intriguing, underhanded dealings that happen at the house where he is tutoring the young girls in painting. The story is unique in the sense that it is told from several different narrators' points of view. So you hear the story from the perspective of several different characters in the book. I found this to be fascinating. When I say that there are twists and turns in this book, I mean there are twists and turns. Can you hear Phoebe snoring? Am I boring you, Phoebe? It is page turning. It is enthralling. It draws you in. It's got all the elements of that kind of Gothic, secretive, Victorian, dark academia that you want in a book like this. And it is the perfect spooky season read. Again, it's a long book, but it does not feel that long, because once you start reading it, you want to keep reading because you want to find out what's happening. Just when you think you've got it figured out, there's another twist and you think, oh my gosh, I did not see that coming. It's just a fantastic book, and I highly recommend The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. Another classic Gothic tale is the American Gothic tale, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. This book was first published in 1820, and it is the story of Ichabod Crane. Ichabod Crane is a tall, lanky schoolteacher who is as timid as he is ambitious. He lives in the superstitious town of Sleepy Hollow, which is in the Hudson Valley in New York State. And he makes it his goal to win the hand of the town's wealthy young beauty. He has to go head to head with another towns member. And all is well until one night fate intervenes and his life takes a chilling turn when he runs into the Headless Horseman. Now, this tale blends folklore, superstition, and just downright spooky together in a way that has endured for well over 200 years now, 205 to be exact. And if you grew up in New York State or in the part of New England where I grew up, you're very familiar with the legend of Sleepy Hollow. As young children, we read this in school, and you always kind of see those drawings of Ichabod Crane. If you go to Sleepy Hollow, New York, which is a real town, you can see the home of Washington Irving. But this book has some fabulous illustrations in it. And it is just a classic tale. And it's, even though I read it as a child, it really is an adult book. It's a slim read. So as compared to A Discovery of Witches and The Woman in White, this is something that you could get through in an afternoon. So you may want to start with The Legend of Sleepy Hollow or The Story of the Headless Horseman. I can remember when I was a little girl, my dad telling us the story of Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman, and always going out, on Halloween evening and wondering, are we going to run into him? So I think Dad would say to us, he rides through the cemeteries. You need to watch out for the Headless Horseman. What a way to spook young children. But anyway, it is a classic American Gothic tale that has endured, as I said, for over 200 years. And I highly recommend that you read this every spooky season. It is just a wonderful addition to any October book list. I always love to read some mysteries during the spooky season. If you're looking for a good October mystery, then I recommend Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. I listened to this book on audiobook through Audible, so I'll put a picture of the cover of the book up on the screen. It is a fabulous book, and the one I listened to was narrated by Hugh Fraser, who played Captain Hastings on the BBC production of the Hercule Poirot mysteries. This is a Poirot mystery, and it starts out at a children's Halloween party in an English village. And there's a young girl at the party who brags that she has witnessed a murder. Well, a few hours later, she is found dead, drowned in the bucket where they were bobbing for apples. And as a result of that, Hercule Poirot is called in to investigate, and the case takes a whole bunch of twists and turns. It really is a fabulous story, and it was so great to listen to. I listened to it when I was driving and working out, and I was absolutely captivated by it. And what could be better for October than a mystery called Halloween Party? So I would highly recommend you listen to it. It's a great audiobook, but it does also come in, physical book form. And it is classic Agatha Christie, where there's twists and turns and a puzzle, and Poirot does his thing and uses his little gray cells to solve the mystery. Another mystery that is perfect for the spooky season is Gaudy Night by Dorothy L. Sayers. Gaudy Night is a Lord Peter Wimsey mystery, but it actually starts out with another character as the main protagonist, and that is Harriet Vane. It is set against the backdrop of Oxford University and all of the academic traditions that are part of that university. Harriet is going back to Oxford for some festivities for Gaudy Night, and what should be a short visit full of, parties and festivities turns out to be anything but, when a series of malicious pranks start happening. There's poison pen letters. Harriet starts to investigate, and eventually she calls in Lord Peter Wimsey. And as I said, it's all set against the backdrop of academia in the fall. And there's just something about that I love. It's the perfect time of year to read this. The descriptions of the buildings and the campus, all of the academic traditions that are involved make this just an excellent read. And I do love the interaction between Harriet Vane and Lord Peter Wimsey. I think this is one of the most but one of the best books that I've read by Dorothy L. Sayers. I absolutely love this book. So I highly recommend Gaudy Night by Dorothy L. Sayers. And finally, I want to conclude with something that is a true classic. It is considered one of the most quintessential Gothic horror stories ever written, and that is Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is told through a series of letters and diary entries. I did not know that. I had never actually read the real Dracula. You hear the story of it, but I'd never actually read the real book. And it is told, as I said, through a series of diary entries and letters. It is fascinating. It's the story of Jonathan Harker's kind of eerie trip to Transylvania, where he meets the mysterious Count Dracula, who lives in this crumbling old castle. Stoker weaves together all of those kind of Victorian neuroses and fears and into this incredible, chilling horror story. It is just phenomenal. As I said, I had never read it. You hear about Count Dracula, you kind of know in your mind the story, but this is absolutely spine-tingling and page-turning. Once Mr. Harker meets up with Count Dracula, it starts off this whole series of events where Count Dracula makes his way to England, leaving in his wake a whole slew of victims. So if you want a good Gothic horror story, one of the originals, then I highly recommend you check out Dracula by Bram Stoker. As I said, this is probably one of the scariest books on my list. But because I'm familiar with the story, I think it makes it less scary and more just fascinating at the mind who could create this. And like I said, it's just so interesting to see how Stoker preyed upon all of those kind of Victorian neuroses and fears and created this unbelievable tale of this vampire creature. It really is just an unbelievable book. So if you have some time, because it's a fat one again, it might be something that you could listen to. I bet this would be great on audiobook, but Bram Stoker's Dracula is my final recommendation for books to add to your book pile for the spooky season. I would not read this right before you go to bed. Read this during the day and then follow it up with Mary Engelbreit as kind of an antidote to the spooky, scary part of this book. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, this discussion of books that I think would be perfect for the spooky season. If you did, go ahead and leave me a spooky season emoji. Leave me a jack-o'-lantern emoji down in the comment box if you don't want to leave a comment. If you do want to leave a comment, I'd love to know what you are reading in October. Do you have any spooky season books that you read traditionally or that you have on your TBR pile? I would love to hear about your recommendations. The comments, the emojis, all of those things really do help out our channel. We appreciate you so much. Thank you to everyone who watches our channel, presses the super thanks button, leaves us a comment or an emoji, and is just there supporting us on this fun journey that we are on. All right, that is going to do it for today's video. I will leave a few more bookish videos linked here in the iCards and in the description box below for you to enjoy until our next upload. Take care, everybody, and I will see you very soon.